What's up, RotoViz?
Into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Dave Caban alongside Curtis Patrick. We are two of the owners at RotoViz, ready to come back and just absolutely tear through another main event draft here on RotoViz Radio. Curtis, you're still glowing. How are you doing?
I still haven't come down from our draft from the 103 on Tuesday night, man. And I'm pumped to be back here again. We're going to have a slightly different build tonight, different exercise, drafting from the 106. You know, I think as we get into these middle rounds, we'll probably still end up with some of the, you know, the same players, but at the top of the draft, it's going to give us a little bit different build, which is going to be exciting. Just thankful for the opportunity to take another swing with you as my podcast partner in this awesome event by the FFPC. So just kind of setting the table here. FFPC, myffpc.com. I mean, it's the home of high stakes redraft. We've got our dynasty products over there, obviously. In the main event, I mean, this is just as big as it gets. I mean, this is as big as it gets. It's $2,000 for this entry, man. And we've got a chance to bring home $1 million. $1 million, Dave. $1 million. So this is going to be awesome. We're going to run pure. The universe is going to give us those one or two little openings. We're going to just slide right in and get our thing done. It's going to be great. We got to load up the queue, man, because this thing is going to kick off in about 2 minutes. And from the 106, I just want to make sure we've got that top 6 locked in. We got to be ready for anything. You know, the other night we were drafting 103. We're thinking we're going Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp. All of a sudden, Jonathan Taylor falls into our lap. So we got to have our list of players ready to go. Obviously, you know, we start at the top. Jonathan Taylor is going to be in this queue. Christian McCaffrey is going to be in this queue. Jefferson, Kupp. It's really those 5-6 players. You know, is it gonna be Austin Eckler and Jamar Chase? I mean, I think that's the chalky way to take it. You know, if you want to go with a hero RB build, though, you know, you got to start making some decisions. Do you want to take a swing with Derrick Henry and have a big dog build? Do you want to go, you know, one elite tight end at the top and take Travis Kelce and his potential 200 targets this year? So, you know, Dave, I think let's just spend a minute cutting that up here a little bit. You know, Eckler and Chase, are those really the only two names that make sense for you? Or do you want to put somebody else in there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if Jamar Chase is available here or Austin Eckler, those are the picks I would definitely want. I absolutely love Jamar Chase. I think I could make a very strong argument in my mind about him being my overall wide receiver selection that I would want more than any other player this year. So for me, and wow, Henry, my cat. Okay, there I am. I'm back.
Henry the cat says he wants Derrick Henry.
Yeah, Henry. Exactly. Yeah, Henry. Yeah. Henry loves Derrick Henry. I think those are really the two guys I'd be looking at. Looks like this draft is already fired off. We have CMC and Jonathan Taylor going. CMC at the 101, followed by Justin Jefferson. So these next two picks will really make or break the decision here. I will kick it back to you, though. If Jamar Chase or Austin Eckler were not an option, who would you be looking at then? I guess in that, Cooper Kupp goes. So perhaps this question's already going to be stale by the time you have the opportunity to answer.
Yeah, man. And Jamar Chase goes there. So this really comes down to Austin Eckler versus the field. And I think the field at the 106 really is just Derrick Henry and Travis Kelce. Yeah. I don't want to lose our draft in the first round, though. And I feel like the pick here that gives us the greatest flexibility and is also probably the most risk averse amongst those three picks is Austin Eckler. I don't expect him to do what he did last year, but he can produce in any type of game script because of his receiving ability. And, he's younger than these other two guys. I think it's the safe pick, but there's still obviously some upside. So I'm cool going Eckler if you want to do an Eckler build.
Yeah, I think we go Eckler and we see what happens from there. Get that running back under our control here. Start building, following up on that. Already have questions coming in, which we love. I'm just going to address the first one here, though. Dave, are you drinking coffee and Coke? I wish that I was.
Yeah,
I actually would have liked to have done that, but got tied up with a couple of things and had no chance to prepare myself anything but this glass of water here before we started.
Okay, glass of water. So I am at least a little bit more interesting than the glass of water. I've got a healthy pour of Kettle One premium vodka with some Simply Lemonade. So that's what I'm enjoying on this fine night. We got another question from Diego. He's just bringing it hot tonight. Any interest in Diggs at the 106? Feels like it won't lose because of him pick. Yeah, I mean, I agree there to an extent, Diego, but I'm becoming increasingly convinced that Diggs is a less of a good value versus other wide receivers available in the first 2 rounds. He doesn't feel like the same type of crush it that those first 3 guys that went off the board at 3, 4, 5 feel like to me at this juncture. And I think, in the second round, players like Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, and of that ilk are going to provide similar upside to Diggs. So Diggs does go there at the 109 after Henry and Kelsey. So, the other 2 players that I'd, suggested at the 106 there go to Ball Sacks and Rumham right after us. So,
Rumham. Love the Always Sunny reference there.
Oh, yeah. Rumham chasing at the bottom of the pool. Diggs versus Adams. Diggs versus Adams debate. That's what Evan was in here the other night, man. With lots of questions. For me, it's Adams above Diggs by a half tier. If he was going into a totally unknown situation, maybe it would be a little bit different. But Adams has been an elite touchdown scorer for many years. It feels sticky to him with his abilities at this point, and he has the prior history of similarly elite touchdown performance back at Fresno State with his quarterback. Derek Carr. So, stepping right back in there, Darren Waller being a little bit healthy / contractually injured. Hunter Renfrow is a good separator and was getting some of those red zone looks. But I mean, I expect Devontae Adams to crush it in terms of his role and target market share, et cetera, to the same degree that he did in Green Bay. I mean, I think he's that much better than everybody else in the Las Vegas offense. So Stephon Diggs is dealing with the ascension of Gabe Davis and also a rushing quarterback that anytime, can take some of those touchdowns off the table. And Diggs hasn't shown that type of elite touchdown scoring yet either. So those are a couple of things that ding him for me. Anything you want to add to that debate, Dave?
I guess I would just say that, you're looking at 2 very solid receivers, definitely guys that you can put into that top 10 type of range. But I do agree with you in that I feel a touch better here about Adams and the outlook. And a lot of that goes back to when you're looking at that team around them, though there are certainly, some other players there in that offense in Las Vegas. It's easier for me to pencil in Adams with that type of touchdown scoring, that type of target total, and really driving his team forward than it is with Diggs. Not to say that Diggs doesn't deserve to be in the discussion, but I do like Adams a touch better. Oh my gosh, the gang drafts a main event. Oh my God. That would be great. Awesome. I think that's the name of this episode.
Oh, are you going to record it for the podcast? Are you recording it? That'd be great. I don't know if we actually synced that up or not, but that would be an awesome. Maybe we can at least get that for a thumbnail. I'll talk to Calm Kelly and see if that could be the YouTube thumbnail for this one. Nape says, look at Andrews going in the first. Maybe Team 11 is going to go bully tight end, and they do.
Oh, nice call.
Like he knew. Nape, are you drafting from the 111? Are you calling your own shots here? That's not allowed. That's a party foul. Well, that does take one player out of our queue, and we do need to start focusing on what we're doing at 207 here, Dave. Kyle Pitts was at the top. He was a player that we were targeting at 210 the other day. It's just not materializing for us there. So, we did take Tyreek Hill at the 210 the other day. I think he's on the list for us again. 2-7. I've got Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon in there as well. I think Debo, who we took in the third the other night, would be a potential play. This is almost kind of shaping up more to be an RB start, which is probably not our plan. It might be where the value is, unless we feel comfortable taking Tyreek a little bit earlier in this draft than we had to the other night. What are your thoughts here?
So I start thinking about how we build out that team after this player that we take here. Yeah. Now, for me, it's going to be very uncomfortable to go with the 2 running backs here.
Yeah.
I would not mind having Tyreek on both of these teams. I feel that in my mind, I'm very comfortable taking Tyreek right around the turn, sometimes potentially even in round 1. So I would probably lean a little bit more Tyreek, but I think it's important to kick things back to you and get your perspective on some of the other receivers that we'd probably be looking at in the next round and think, to see if you think that we can kind of approximate some of that production later on, whereas approximating what those running backs could do is going to become very difficult.
Yeah, I think it will. But at the same time, we really are going to be digging in on running back health if we go RB. And that's not something that we really would like to do. Tyreek goes to Rumham there at the 2-5, so he's going to be off the board. This kind of comes down to a Debo versus a second potentially elite running back now. Now, Najee Harris has fallen down with the Lisfranc issue much later than he would have been available, a week and a half ago or something like that. Debo would be a good 8 picks earlier than we had to take him the other night, but that would also give this team a common rooting interest. When I look at that 3-6, we're going to probably be targeting, Dave, players like Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown. That's probably what we're looking at. There's not going to be that running back value there in the 3rd round. Najee Harris goes there at the 2-6, so we're on the clock. This is really probably Debo versus Kamara or Mixon for me.
Yeah. And now, obviously, it is earlier than we took Debo the other night. We could wait again on one of the wide receivers. There's a couple of options that would be coming back around, but I got to be honest here. I think I'd rather go Debo than go with one of those backs. I will let you get the final word on this one, though.
It's fine. I mean, we want to hold to what will probably push us to the right structure that we want to have for the end of the season. And Debo lets us do that. It is hard to pass on these backs here. But we're gonna take the play. We're playing for the big win. We're not playing to make the playoffs. We're not playing, to win, the $4 or $5 grand for the season sweep in our individual main event league. We want to take this the distance. So we think that we can find some players that have running back upside later. It's much, much more difficult to do that at the wide receiver position. So now, that being said, a couple players that we talked about the other night, Leonard Fournette, Javonte Williams, both of them falling a little bit more in drafts. If one of them were to come back to us at the 3-6, maybe that's a better shot to get in on one of those players versus the other night when we would have been passing on Debo to do so. I've got right now in our queue for next round, Dave, Joe Mixon, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Leonard Fournette, Javonte Williams. The only other players that really would probably warrant consideration would be, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton. I'm kind of off Keenan Allen, who goes in that range because we're already on Eckler. I don't want to be that exposed to the same offense with 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. So that's really what I'm looking at. Mike Evans would also potentially be a play there. Not really the profile of a wide receiver that we would take this early, typically, so dependent on touchdowns. But that's the only other player. We've got a little bit of time, so let's take another question.
Yep. Diego
again. Debo versus AJ Brown. I know we just saw Debo do it, but I feel like AJB is a better wideout, and his QB has a whole season of NFL experience.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. We talked about it a little bit the other night, Diego. Dave brought it up, I think very smartly. Jimmy G re-signing in San Francisco almost does serve to reinforce the floor for Debo, because if Lance just comes out and sucks at the beginning of the season, San Francisco has an option. And it's an option that obviously helped to propel Debo to very, elite scoring last season. But I mean, your point's well taken. Debo did have to get pretty creative to get to that 300 plus PPR threshold last year. But even if you remove all of the rushing production, I think I got into this the other night. I mean, he was a 1,400 yard receiver and had, tons of touchdowns. So even if he had only done that, he was still a smash last year, and we'd still be just as excited about him. With AJ Brown, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if AJ Brown can do 1,400 yards in the Philly offense. I don't know if Debo can do 1,400 yards again this year if Trey Lance stays at the quarterback. I mean, I think the rushing element that both of the quarterbacks bring at this point does serve to cap it a little bit. And both of the guys have, they have pretty solid team competition for targets. I mean, Debo will have Brandon Ayuk, who really seems to have ascended over the summer, and like all of the chatter about Brandon has been about Brandon Ayuk and his connection with Trey Lance. And then with AJB, he's got Devontae Smith, who had an awesome rookie season, and Dallas Goedert. So, I mean, really, it's 3 deep in both of those receiving rooms. Snacks adds that Debo just isn't a good bet to sustain his production, especially in what should be a more run-heavy offense. I mean, San Francisco would like to be run-heavy, but they were still fairly run-heavy last year, and he did all this. I mean, again, Snacks, I would say that, Debo would still be, a back-end wide receiver 1 consideration this year, even if he had only posted his receiving stats from last year. Low ADOT, totally fair, but in a full PPR setting, we don't necessarily care about that. Low ADOT means higher completion percentage, and Debo is one of the most elite yards after the catch and elusive rating wide receivers in the NFL. So that actually plays to his skill set. But totally fair points. We are trying to attack this position through elite volume and not necessarily rely on one wide receiver. If we had gone running back, Debo as our 1, that's a little more slippery. Nape says Tyreek might fall. Hey, Nape.
That would be amazing.
Tyreek went to Rumham before our Debo pick, bro. So he's not going to fall. I wish he was going to. I wish he was going to.
So can I just jump in here, though, talking about AJ Brown? I completely get the points on Debo Samuel. One of the reasons, though, that I have some reservations with AJ Brown is when you sit down and you do a subjective projection. I often talk about how you have to fade those, though. It to me looks hard, like you start getting AJ Brown to around 145 targets. For me, it's hard to get him up to 1,200 receiving yards. And I feel like around 8 touchdowns would be a very good outcome for him. So I feel like he's kind of capped with what I could reasonably expect for him in some of those areas. So when I'm looking at players that are similar, there's a couple of edges that I can give to Debo over AJ Brown, granted them being somewhat similar. So one of the things that I have to do in a situation like this is think about things that could separate them, right? So we know that there's a potential for Debo to get involved in more ways last year. There's that backup now of Garoppolo, as you mentioned. And so AJ Brown needs more things, I think, to go right for him. And I think there's also a number of things that could go wrong as well. So I think that's kind of how I'm breaking that tie.
So we're on the clock now. I'll quickly say, Nape, can you not see our draft board, man? He keeps suggesting players that are gone. It says T. Higgins time, and he likes Lenny in the 3rd. Dude, T. Higgins goes at the 212. Leonard Fournette goes at the 304. Yes, we would like both of those players, but they're not available, man. They're not available. Dave, the only 2 players left in our queue, I mean, it just totally got wiped out, and it feels like we got tiered out almost. We've got DJ Moore and Cortland Sutton. I'm equally excited about the 2 of them. But I would say that I think Cortland Sutton's upside is higher due to his potential touchdown scoring with Russell Wilson. I'd rather have the player in the better overall offense. Yeah. So I lean to Sutton unless you want to veto.
No, I don't think so. I think I'd like to go Sutton here. There's a lot of things that you can point to in favor of DJ Moore and just how solid he's been over the first couple of years of his career. despite a situation in Carolina that's probably not the most conducive to having fantasy success. But with what we're looking for in this team in this spot, it does feel like there's more potential for Cortland Sutton to really be unlocked, and also playing in an offense that looks like it's going to take a significant step forward. Not thinking that Baker Mayfield's going to do that in Carolina. I'm much more interested in Sutton there than DJ Moore.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna do the chat the favor of zooming in further.
So for those of you listening on the podcast,
see this better now. Can you see this better?
We are getting a number.
I can only make it so big.
For those of you just listening to this, there are a number, and we love the user comments here. A number of user comments coming in recommending players that have been off the board for maybe 10 or 12 picks.
Jake says not a good sign for chat IQ.
Chat IQ.
Well, hey, listen, man, it would be actually very heady for us to figure out a way to draft players who were already drafted. If we could figure that out, we could build the optimal every time. So it's fine. Cortland Sutton is our 3rd round pick. So just kind of rehashing, if you're joining a little bit late, Dave and I are drafting from the 106 tonight. A little different situation than drafting from the 103 the other day. We've got Austin Eckler, Deebo Samuel, and Cortland Sutton in the barn. Team 7 is taking some eugenics. Look at that high test, LOL. Derrick Henry plus Najee Harris. That is a very high T start. Lots of stiff arms. Lots of high knees. That type of stuff. Let's start talking about the next 2 rounds here, Dave.
Yep.
It's nice that we're insulated from any big time, positional runs being in the middle. That did get to us a little bit, and it was in this 3-4 round range the other night where we really started the yellow stream in terms of the whole room really hammering those wide receivers. So it does feel good to have 2 players that I think are solid threats to finish as wide receiver 1s this year. Both of them figure to be, big time touchdown scorers, get some of those elite 30 and 40 point outcomes in the most meaningful weeks of the season. We got to start talking about, do we want to hit tight end a little earlier? That was something that we talked about the other night. Deebo actually pushed us off of George Kittle. And so it really comes down to, all right, do we have an interest in Darren Waller, or do we want to wait later? So we can have that debate here in a minute. Jalen Waddle would give us a play in the Miami offense opposite of our Tyreek investment the other night. And I know Waddle is very high on your list.
Yeah.
I've probably got, I think, about expected exposure in him across 400 plus drafts. I think I've got in the 8 to 10% range, but it'd be nice to have a Dave brand player here in the top 5 rounds. Gabriel Davis would be really exciting, I think, with the start that we've got. Deontay Johnson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm also getting some 5th round potential targets in here for us. So anybody really stand out? Is Waller a consideration for you in round 4? Or would you prefer some of the wide receivers that I've mentioned to the tight end position?
Yeah, I think that Waller definitely could be interesting. As in that other build that we did, we didn't end up with one of those top level tight ends. Having said that, though, when I start hearing names like Jalen Waddle and Deontay Johnson mentioned, it's hard for me to pivot away. Now, the one thing I'm going to check, Curtis, is to see if there's any possibility that we could get George Kittle coming back around. There's a 1% chance. So that probably
telling me there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You're telling me there's a chance, but we're not going to do that. I mean,
no.
we're not going to go in on Kittle, and Deebo. If it was just Kittle and Deebo in that offense, and we didn't have to worry about Brandon Ayuk, I wouldn't be as scared by it. Like, I would have no problem building a team, with Kelsey and Juju, for example, or Pitts in London. When I think when the offense is going to funnel just through those top 2, and one of them's a tight end, that's fine. You get that other high end wide receiver, it just gets very tough to feel good about rolling them out in your starting lineup. Best ball is a whole nother animal, but obviously that's not the case here. Man, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Gabe Davis go to the same team at the turn.
Wow.
That's an interesting turn there, really early versus ADP on both players, but man, you got to get your guys. Nape says that's the earliest I've seen Gabe Davis taken. I have seen a number of instances of him going in the 3rd round now over the last week. Jake Springer says Allen Robinson needs to be on this team. Nape says Juju or Deontay needs to get back to you. And Henry says, I finished a double draft, now doing a fourth for the day. We'll watch and do my draft. Henry, you are a freaking monster, man. Dave, I'm actually thinking about hitting up this late night main after we're done. We'll have to see how high I am after we're done here. But I've got Darren Waller, Jalen Waddle, Allen Robinson, Deontay Johnson, and Chris Godwin in our queue. I think Godwin is probably more of a 5th round consideration, but man, I'm kind of still leaning wanting to go with the wide receiver over Waller.
I am as well.
Waller just the injuries and the competition with Adams and Renfrow both, plus, McDaniel's infatuation with the running back screen game. Waller's still an excellent weapon, and I know the team's re-upping him. He's still going to be a focal point of the offense, but it's hard for me to feel as good about him being really an elite investment versus some of the other, to me, I just don't see him being a whole tier above Dalton Schultz. And if we wanted to take a swing, on Schultz in the 5th, if he somehow made it there, I would be more on board for that after getting a third high-end wide receiver than I would be for skipping one of these guys for Waller.
Yeah, I think what it's really coming down to for me here,
and Vultures takes Waller there, so that's nice for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure that missing on Waller in this round really disadvantages our team or really advantages it in a way that's significant enough for me to forego 2 receivers that I'm really interested in and I think could be major contributors for this team. So Allen Robinson just goes. So it looks like we're going to get one of either Deontay Johnson or Jalen Waddle.
I'm pumped about either one, man.
Yeah,
I'm super pumped about either one. It's honestly, I really honestly don't care. I in some ways I just kind of hope that this other drafter that Ball Sacks takes one of them.
Ball Sacks.
But if he doesn't, I know you're super big on Waddle. To me, what is happening behind Deontay Johnson, even though, George Pickens, is exciting, and Chase Claypool is a big slot, and Pat Freiermuth, those are all good supporting guys. I feel like there's more of a gap between Deontay and those other guys than, Waddle and Tyreek fighting for that kind of elite target share in what should figure to be a more run-focused offense. Yep. So when I'm thinking about which player is more likely to have more 10 target weeks, I think that's still going to be Deontay.
I agree.
But I know you're super big on Waddle. So if you're going to feel like your inner fanboy is deflated by taking Deontay over Waddle, I'm fine with going Waddle.
Yeah, no, I would be super pumped to be able to get Waddle here, as I would take him in the 3rd. But I think that Deontay Johnson actually.
Oh, you know what though?
Yep.
We got a bye week problem. We'd have 3 bye week 9 guys if we take Deontay. Is that enough to push us on Waddle? 10 seconds.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we'll take Deontay.
Yeah. Where I was going with that was, I think that Deontay also has this very proven track record where I feel pretty confident knowing what I'm getting from Deontay here.
Yeah.
And
Waddle goes to pick after us.
Right.
So,
moving anything that we can't expect. So I'm cool with Deontay, and my stance on bye weeks always has been here. I actually kind of like having 1 week where things just get punted, and then maybe I'm at full strength all the other weeks.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's fine. We were looking for, we were on both players. We're looking for anything to break the tie and make the decision easier. So let's get some feedback. What do you guys think? In the chat, from the 106, we start Austin Eckler, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson. I feel like our goal here is, if we can, to have, 5 top 20 wide receivers. I don't know if we'll get there. There's a couple guys maybe that I think have been drafted that won't finish that way. So we've still got a chance. What do you think about this start? And what do you think we should do in round 5? It'll be fun to debate that. I'm getting some of our guys in the queue, but I want to hear from you. Henry says, forget bye weeks except 13 and 14. That's 14. All that matter. Nape says 6 hole is probably the toughest position to pick from this year. Yeah, I mean, the 6 hole right in the middle of the draft, the 6 and 7, it does actually force you to discover your conviction versus, being on the ends. So I think that's probably fair. Dave and I are going to leave this draft hyper confident for sure. Diego says I had to choose between MT and Juju as my wide receiver 4 and a keeper, and decided to take the risk on MT. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'd probably go for the healthy guy, but it's fine. Henry's on the clock. Montgomery or J.K. Dobbins? Quick, I'm on the clock. Dave, you want that one?
I think I'd say Dobbins.
Okay, Dobbins. There you go. Buy the dip on the rookie that set the rookie reception record, Bobby Boucher. He wanted us to take Jalen Waddle. Is this not PPR, though? I feel like Waddle will improve in that environment and will regress for Deontay. See, that's where I actually disagree.
Right.
And I thought, we've been talking about this all summer that, Big Ben was busted. And basically any requisite talent at the quarterback position would be an upgrade for Pittsburgh this year.
And I don't think changes in that wide receiver grouping. So you have Juju going, you have Pickens coming in. So the environment itself, from the perspective, if you think that the quarterback is at least roughly the same, I don't think does anything that changes the amount of opportunity that Deontay would have. And Deontay has had very significant opportunity.
Okay, so we're getting some feedback here as we're, the tail end of round 4 is finishing up. So we'll break down the draft here in a minute. Nate says you guys have a nice anchor RB build. Keep going with that yellow. I think it's Godwin time. Jake Springer says Team 5 is the team to beat. We've got an identical structural build to Team 5. That does make things difficult when you're drafting right next to a like-minded drafter. They've got Jamar Chase, Alvin Kamara, Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle. We've got Austin Eckler, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson. I mean, it's probably a wash. Right now. So that's going to be interesting to see how this draft develops against DeGilds here. Jake says, are you actively fighting the urge to take your boy Lazard in the 5th? Yeah, kind of. but I don't think we need to go that early. And I think if he gets to us in the 6th, that'd be great. If he doesn't, that's fine. Some comments about the quarterbacks. We do get Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes coming off as the first 2 QBs. Damian Pierce in the 5th round. That's another high T team, man. Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, 3 of the first 5 picks. But, hey, if you're going to go early and often at RB, it helps to have 2 pretty, freaking sweet wide receivers. And that team has Justin Jefferson and Hollywood Brown. So, yeah, I mean, it's not how I would do it, but, it's cool players with the yellow jersey on. Okay, Dave, so we got to start getting our guys. Yep. I would really like to get Godwin to slide to us here. We just need him to the last 2 more picks. He would be a slam dunk for me. Dalton Schultz, I think, also becomes a consideration here with the team not looking super pumped about Jalen Tolbert at this point and Gallup not being fully ready. He could perhaps even have higher target share this year than he had last year. Brandon Cooks goes, so we're just sweating 1 more pick on Godwin. Rashad Bateman, Darnell Mooney, also both interesting options here. We also have the option of going with an elite QB. Rashad Bateman goes. Oh, so let's take Chris Godwin, man.
I think that Godwin, no, I'm very good with that. I think that Godwin, even with some of the injury worries that you would have there, still is perfectly in play to have a season where he could be a low-end wide receiver 1. I feel pretty good about getting Chris Godwin here. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, our goal here was, try to get as many top 20 wide receivers as we can. Feel like
Godwin's going to be a top 20 wide receiver in
when he plays
in points per game
per week. Yeah, per week for sure. So
yes,
we might not have him in the first week or 2. That's fine. Brady looks fine. I mean, he's still got all the zip on his passes. I mean, looked pretty sharp in the preseason. So coming back in round 6, we do have we want to win the flex. We've probably done that, taking these 4 wide receivers that we've had here. we're still going to be interested in wide receiver, but we're also going to be kicking the tires on other positions now. I do have Darnell Mooney there. He would be pretty interesting in the 6th as a super high target market share guy.
Sure.
Going early, he goes right there to Fantasy Vultures, actually vulturing us there. So that's
have a good one, Diego.
Oh, Diego, yeah, thanks for coming back, man. Jake says Godwin wide receiver 4, beautiful. Nape throwing some digs at that 103 team. Why take Pierce in the 5th when you can take Ramondre or Penny in round 7 to 9? No comment. We do have some elite quarterbacks. That would be great. It would be nice to be elite at one of the onesie positions. We're not going to be able to do that at tight end. So, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, pretty interesting here. Hurts and Murray, over the next couple of rounds. Lazard is going to be interesting. I think Adam Thielen's a little bit interesting. From a running back perspective, you got Breece Hall still hanging out there, Dave. We've got J.K. Dobbins hanging out there. We've got Elijah Mitchell hanging out there. There's still some, we're kind of into the middle of that next tier now. And there's like lots of guys that I would be really pumped about having the 6th round.
Yeah, I think that the options that open up here start to get intriguing. There's more players that look like ones that aren't, entirely separated. It's just a matter of how you want to build out your team from here. So to kind of help me prepare for this, Curtis, out of the players that you would have in our queue here, who are the 3 that kind of fill the criteria if you think they're going to be available and you would want to prioritize over some of the other names that you just rattled off?
Well, Lamar Jackson just goes. He would have been 1.
Yep.
I think Justin Herbert's a pretty cool option. It's a little bit of a backdoor stack with Austin Eckler there playing into the LA Chargers offense. It would also give us the opportunity to put Gerald Everett on this team later, as a potential rotational player at tight end. So Justin Herbert and Kyler, being and maybe Jalen Hurts as well. I think those are those elite QBs that would be nice. Even though Herbert doesn't run as much as Murray or Hurts, he also does add a little bit with his legs. And we're looking for, somebody that can add that 15 to 30 yards a game and have a couple games with the rushing touchdown, really just gives you that additional ceiling when things go a little crazy. I kind of like, Breece Hall continues to fall, man. He was going more in that 3rd, 4th range a couple weeks ago, but there's a non-zero chance he comes back to us here in the 6th. I mean, that starts to feel pretty intriguing. Throw him on the top here. As rookie RBs typically hit their stride at the end of the season. And then, I also do really still like Adam Thielen. He is older and he's not really similar to the rest of the wide receivers on this team, but he's been an elite touchdown scorer the last couple of years. I think that's the last phase of his game that will go. The Vikings are going to be a very pass happy offense again this year, but instead of just being pass happy from a play calling perspective, they actually also now have a more passing friendly offense in a scheme that obviously, can support 2 or even 3 wide receivers every week. So if I'm narrowing this down, for me, it's elite QB, Breece Hall or Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I think that the mixture or the player that I'm most interested in out of that mixture would be the elite QB.
Okay.
I think that allows us to
Thielen goes there at the corner, so that helps us make the
so we get
here.
that elite QB, which I think is going to be very useful in season for us to have that. We get that out of the way. We continue to build. Now, if Justin Herbert were around, I really love the idea of being able to stack him up with Everett. We've talked about Everett being a tight end that we feel very good about, thinking that there's some upside for him, that similar players that generally go maybe 5 spots before him in tight end ADP. And we have seen now progressively over the last couple of years how important these elite passers are becoming.
I'm a little nervous.
Your regular redraft leagues. What are you nervous
about? I'm a little
about,
nervous because the team drafted out of the 10 spot, a couple picks before us, is sitting on Mike Williams. He's already got 3 wide receivers and no quarterback. So we're going to have to see if Herbert makes it past that spot. I don't think the Keenan Allen owner, ball sacks. He does have Keenan Allen, but he has no other wide receivers. I would be shocked to see him go early QB. but crazy things happen. So I think, okay, so this Philly is on the clock. If Herbert makes it past this pick, I feel pretty good that he's going to get to us, but we'll have to see.
Can you quickly talk about some of your thoughts on Michael Thomas? I think we've had a couple of questions about Thomas.
I just don't see the point. I just don't see it and Herbert does go to the Williams owner. So I called that one in the crystal ball. So with Michael Thomas, we've seen what he can do when he's fully healthy. And we've seen what Jameis Winston will do in terms of driving, just crazy levels of target share to a clear one when one exists in the offense. But I just don't think we can compare 29-year-old 2 straight seasons injured Michael Thomas to early career Mike Evans that, was paired with Jameis Winston. It's just not the same thing. And Chris Olave looks like he's going to be really good. And Jarvis Landry is really good. And Alvin Kamara is an elite receiving running back. It would be good for the Saints for real football purposes if Michael Thomas is out there helping to cause confusion in the secondary, who you're going to prioritize in coverage. I think he should be going more in that DeAndre Hopkins range. I think he's going to miss some games. And I also think he's less of a sure thing, start every week. Breece Hall goes there. Our queue's starting to get cleared. So in our queue, we've got Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts. Had a couple of running backs and J.K. Dobbins and Elijah Mitchell there as well. T.J. Hawkinson is of interest to me. Alan Lazard is of interest to me, Dave. Yep. That's probably it. I think that's the team picture here. So we're going to be up next. Who just went? Elijah Moore just went. So we've got Kyler and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. We've got Alan Lazard at wide receiver, and we've got TJ Hawkinson at tight end. Where's your interest?
Can I be honest with you, Curtis?
I would expect nothing less.
Lazard is of significant interest to me here, which I was not expecting.
Hunter Renfrow goes. Lazard is a brand guy, man, at this point.
I think I'm okay waiting to see what shakes out at quarterback and tight end, and we go Lazard.
Let's do it. It's a fun pick. Got to root for our team. We get it. It's another swing. Lazard needs to come home, Jake. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Oh, Nape says, hey, people are trying to help us out here. This is really helpful. Thinking a couple
the
rounds
Russ
down the
Sutton
line.
stack. Yeah,
Russ Sutton is very possible. Olave feels like a better downfield fit for the numbers and for Jameis, which is his strength. Yeah. I don't really want to talk about Michael Thomas anymore. Dave, I have a bunch of underdog picks I got to make, like 8 before we're on the clock again.
Yeah.
Take the mic, my man.
Yeah. So one of the comments in here talked about, this is from Jake. Never could have convinced me a month ago Pierce would be going a round before Breece. Yeah, this is a super interesting turn of events here. In my mind, I think that the negative outlook that some have developed for Breece based upon what has happened in the preseason, that is something I would not be focusing too heavily on here. So Pierce, this isn't surprising to me that it's happened, essentially getting elevated by what looks like opportunity. Sure, I think that people have thought that he's looked pretty good as a rusher in the preseason, but when you go back and you look at what he achieved in college, that doesn't seem to line up, making me think that it's less likely once we see him in that week-to-week action in a regular season that can continue. Houston not going to be a great offense. I think there's more room there for Breece Hall in that Jets offense for his team to take a step forward and start to propel him up. So I think this is a case where really there's been a pretty significant overreaction. I can get going after Pierce. I can get the interest level in him there. Obviously boosted a little bit by the team cutting Marlon Mack. Of course, he's back on the practice squad. Wouldn't be surprised if we see him back on the team by the end of the year. But I think that's kind of what has shaken out there. I would be a big proponent here of fading things that we've seen. So now that delta's huge. Getting somebody like Hall a whole round after Pierce feels pretty good to me. Curtis, you are back.
I'm back. I bought about 20 minutes here. Made a flurry of picks there. A bunch of drafts coming to a close there. Okay, so man, we're 5 wide receivers deep. We're going to start attacking some of these other positions now. Kyler's still in our queue. J.K. Dobbins is in our queue. I added Josh Jacobs back in there. We talked a lot about, the reasons for maybe looking at some upside there. Looking at the running back position, if we did want to hit that here, top available by ADP. You also got Chase Edmonds. You've got Tony Pollard. At the wide receiver position, we've got tiered out a little bit and we got in front of it. So I don't think we need to go there. Tight end, we're in the Zach Ertz, Dawson Knox, Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth area. Not really interested in pulling the trigger quite yet. So we're on the clock. Kyler Murray goes.
I was hoping it would happen, but it almost makes it easier now. I think we can turn our attention towards one of the backs.
Yeah. So we're talking about J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Chase Edmonds, Tony Pollard. I would lean towards Dobbins or Jacobs here. I think there's pretty good cases for each of them. I think ultimately Jacobs does have a higher ceiling if he could consolidate the receiving work that will be existing in Las Vegas, whereas Dobbins won't have that work available. But I could go either way. What are you thinking here?
Well, I think that we took Jacobs in the other main event that we did here. So I'm inclined to say Dobbins. I think that, there's a pretty similar distribution for these two guys across the year.
So we'll take that. And I mean, geez, Jacobs slid to us in I think round 8 or 9 the other night. So he may even come back around. The only issue that we have with Dobbins is potentially needing to cover up the first couple weeks of the season. So we'll gladly be creative if we need to cover that. I'm going to go ahead and add Russell Wilson and Trey Lance to our queues here. They're and Tom Brady. Not that we are hell bent on stacking here, but if it happens naturally and we're not reaching too far, those are things that we consider. The tight ends, looking at this squad, I think Cole Kmet obviously is another. This would be another spot where we'd want to get him. He just seems like the best value proposition if we miss out on those elite guys. Freiermuth, I'm a little bit less interested in since we started out with Deontay early in this draft. And then, beyond that, Gerald Everett, we talked about. I'm just loading up some of our later round guys now. Austin Hooper, Hayden Hurst. These are some of the players that we want to keep in mind, later on. In round 8, I think we're in a spot now where we're going to want to stack up another running back or two because we don't need to take the tight ends based on ADP yet.
Yep.
If we wanted to go Russell Wilson or Trey Lance, round 8 seems like the spot to do that as well. So we'll have to see what happens over the next 10 picks or so.
Russell Wilson, it's possible we could get away with trying to wait another round on here, actually, according to what I'm seeing with standard deviation and ADP and a binomial distribution. So it's possible.
Remind the listeners what tool you're using for that, because that was a lot of math speak, bro. So what tool are we using?
In that case, I am looking at the FFPC Redraft Command Center.
Boom. And that is a tool that syncs up with your draft. It allows you to pull in the latest, greatest RotoViz redraft and best ball rankings from myself, Sean Siegel, and Michael Dubner. And, then helps you just make decisions based off of who's going to be available a couple of rounds from now and, where we're ranking people versus their ADP. So it's a pretty cool tool. All right. The miniature run on running backs stops there. After we took Dobbins, we saw Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson go, and then we're back to wide receiver with Amari Cooper. Chase Edmonds, he was on my board for the 8th round there. He gets cleared out. I think at running back, we're going to have Jacobs and Pollard potentially get back to us. Kareem Hunt would be available in this area. Rashad Penny would be available in this area. if we want to wait until round 9, if we decide to go another direction, either with Kmet or Russ in round 8, then we could, potentially wait and come back with like a Damian Harris or, Kenneth Walker later on, which is what we ended up doing the other night.
Sorry, I got distracted here by something else. Also, I think I said binomial distribution, which I meant to say normal distribution for anybody paying very close attention out there. So forgive me for that. Chase Edmonds just goes, which would have been very interesting. Let's get to this question though here, Curtis. Curtis, where are you on Tony? Maybe not here with this build, but more generally. Jake.
Yeah, so maybe I'm taking it in from just a player perspective, more of a dynasty perspective. You love seeing what he did last year with that huge, 180 plus yard breakout game. He's super dynamic after the catch. But he's also, being a very twitchy player. He seems to be pretty prone to the soft tissue injuries. So we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on this. Is he going to end up being, a Deshaun Jackson or your Percy Harvin type where, you're not sure when he's going to be playing, Will Fuller type? Sky's the limit in a Brian Daboll offense. If they could figure out the quarterback position, even if that's not necessarily this year, but next year, I would love to have the alpha receiver in a Brian Daboll offense. You saw what he did with Buffalo, and Josh Allen was still pretty much a lump of clay when Daboll got him. So, there's a lot of upside in New York, even though it seems like all of the press lately has been, negative because of the investment that they made in Kenny Golladay and not having that payoff, because of some of the issues with the offensive line, because Daniel Jones doesn't seem to be picking up this offensive scheme quickly and didn't show the flashes that the fan base wanted to see in that tough New York media market. So I think we just got to let September get out of the way here before we draw too many conclusions. If they're able to feed enough touches to Saquon Barkley and get players like Kadarius Toney involved, and maybe a more fully healthy Sterling Shepard, there's still some reason for optimism in New York. So Toney's not really a player that I'm penalizing in Dynasty too much. I have found myself versus where I was last spring, like pre-NFL draft, even in some of the early best ball formats, I was really in on Toney. I haven't really been touching him much in the last month, though. Dave, I don't know if you've been collecting much.
Yeah, I haven't been scooping up that much Toney. And I don't think that it is because I think that all hope is lost for anything. I think that there are some outcomes where he could have a pretty good season, but it really comes down to the way that I'm building my teams and not needing to go after a Toney-like player there. In more outcomes than not, though, I feel like it's likely that he disappoints this season in comparison to what expectations might be for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned.
All right, so we're going to be up next. Our good friend Ballsack is on the clock. And then we're going to be up. He takes Kareem Hunt. So we see Jacobs, Tony Pollard, and Kareem Hunt go. Feels like we could be on the precipice of another running back run here.
Sure.
The backs that I think we would consider here would probably be Rashad Penny, Devin Singletary, Damian Harris. But in our queue, we have Russell Wilson and Trey Lance. Those feel like pretty good plays here, considering what's available at the position. And I think we'll get one of those running backs if we wait till round 9. Or if we feel really convicted on Cole Kmet, we could go that direction here. So we're talking pseudo elite QB, Penny, Singletary, Harris, or Kmet. You have a lean?
No, I don't have a very strong lean here.
No strong lean. I think I want to go Russell Wilson.
Let's do it.
If you without a conviction play here, I like the upside, and it plays into the idea of our team telling a story and Sutton fully breaking out. So we're going to go Russ there, solve that quarterback position for a little bit. We do get him as QB7 off the board. Arguably Trey Lance has more upside if he's running the ball around, but we've got Deebo Samuel on this team. So maybe the best thing for this team would be, Lance not even holding on to the job all season. And Tom Brady, while he would be interesting to get, at age 45, would you want to have multiple main event teams tied up in Brady? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. So At this point, Curtis, we have Austin Eckler, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, Alan Lazard, J.K. Dobbins, and Russell Wilson. Things of note would be the fact that we have to keep it in our mind that we have to remember about tight end. We've mentioned Cole Kmet a couple of times. We're probably still pretty good at wide receiver. We will have to have the discussion, though, about some of the other names at running back that we will be targeting, even not necessarily if in next round, but later in the draft, because I'd like to start thinking about how we're going to build out that grouping.
Yeah. So, it all starts, I think that rounds 9 and 10 will really determine everything that happens after that. Dawson Knox goes there at 8-10. So, we're looking at, I think if Kmet makes it back to us in mid round 9, he's a pretty clear pick. If not, I think that we start to chip away with some of our favorite 0 RB plays, and then come back and, attack tight end through, throwing multiple darts at Gerald Everett, at Hayden Hurst, at Austin Hooper, those types of players. So if Kmet gets here at 9, I'm comfortable waiting, and I think we can get still a reasonable RB3 in round 10. If Kmet's gone, I think we're going to be taking a swing probably on Damian Harris, would be a little bit of a step above. And if he were to be gone, then it would be a tough decision, I think, between Darrell Henderson, Devin Singletary, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. I guess the good thing is when you have a tough decision like that, it gives you options, right? And it makes takes some of the pressure off of players needing to get back to you. I guess one other question that I'm just curious about is last night we were flying, or not last night, Tuesday night, we were flying high, Curtis. How are you feeling about this team so far in comparison to how we were doing back then?
Well, I mean, I am very, very happy. We didn't have any of the extreme values fall to us tonight. I think we've done an excellent job of building a team structurally with with a structure that has a proven track record of success in big tournaments. And also getting a lot of our guys or guys that we're excited about in 2022 within that structure. So it's a super solid draft. I have a lot of hope that it will perform well. And, I do think that we need to crush the rest of the draft. I mean, when I was tweeting out that we're going to be doing this tonight, I grabbed the old Mr. Miyagi GIF. We got to stay focused, man. We're only 8 rounds in. A lot can happen. We got 12 more rounds in this bad boy. So let's keep our eyes on the prize. Damian Harris goes there at the turn. Yeah, that was a player that I would have liked to have fall here. I don't have a lot of this player, and he is injured. But when you think about what happened last year in terms of his production and performance too, we are getting a lot later versus like a month ago on Zach Ertz. So if Kmet were to go, I wouldn't really be super excited about taking Ertz, but in the event that he would pay off, I think he would be a little bit of a tier above the players after Kmet. So that's kind of interesting to me here. We're probably going to be picking between Kmet, Ertz, Singletary, Gordon, Henderson, depending on who's available. So this is going to be a tough one. Going back to the chat at the beginning of this show, the 106, 107, those are tough spots because you got to find your conviction to pull the trigger. And, we're going to be right back in that situation again here in a few minutes, Dave.
Well, we missed on Henderson in our last main event draft.
Yeah.
If Henderson is an option for us and available, it's going to be hard for me to go away from him. That said, though, I think that Zach Ertz actually becomes pretty intriguing. I think that there's a fair amount of upside for Zach Ertz. Could definitely be one of those players that helps out tremendously at the start of the season, carries that value through, even with Hopkins back. So I could probably be talked very easily into going with Zach Ertz.
The range of outcomes tool, is that age adjusted or no?
It is age adjusted, yes.
Can you do me a favor and just pull up Zach Ertz in the range of outcomes tool?
Yep.
Let's just take a look. I'd be interested. We've got a few seconds here. So
if memory serves, it likes him.
Save yourself time. Ertz goes there at the 904. So I think it's going to be between it's going to be between Komet. We could use the tool for Komet, just as an exercise.
The tool hates Komet.
Yeah.
It hates Komet, but I
because of the 0 touchdowns or the 1 touchdown or whatever.
There's a lot of reasons you can understand why, and I think that it's looking back 2 years. You're not getting a very good representation with Cole Kmet if you try to run it through a tool like this. This is one of those where you kind of have to fade it, which I know feels kind of like pick and choosy. But
and Kmet goes. Kmet goes. So I think this pushes us to the running back position. I mean, I'm fine with Henderson, man. I think it's fine. The team picture of players that we're considering here really, we got tiered out at tight end. We're not going to swing here in the 9th round now. So we're looking at Darrell Henderson, Melvin Gordon, Devin Singletary, all mentioned or honorably mentioned in Sean Siegel's 0 RB countdown candidates list this year. Kenneth Walker would also be an option, but we got him a little bit later the other night, so he may even come back to us. I'm cool getting Henderson, man. He's one of our mutually shared interests here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Our second round of applause of the evening.
Yeah, Nape says we should have gone Singletary. I'm not even really going to argue with you. I think Singletary is a really good pick here too. However, if you're really starting to break some ties here, here's the reason that I think, Dave and I might prefer Henderson to Singletary. Singletary was preferred by Sean in his countdown, but he did make note that if he had better thoughts or better feelings about Henderson's health, that he would rank highly in that countdown. And so we may just differ there. Henderson was super productive last season. He's not fighting with a mobile quarterback for short touchdowns, and it's a 2-headed monster in LA versus a potentially 3-headed monster just even in the running back room there in Buffalo, with Zach Moss looking pretty solid again.
And you don't have a quarterback taking away the rushing touchdowns too.
That's right. So, Josh Allen's going to rush for 500 yards and, 6+ touchdowns. So, Henderson just becomes more interesting because, he's naturally got more production upside if Akers were to go down again. And I think he's going to have a valuable weekly role. If it comes to fruition that, Dobbins doesn't play for the first week or two, I'm going to feel totally fine, with this team slotting Henderson in there at RB2 for a week or two if we need to.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point there. And Cam Akers, there's definitely some cause for a little bit of worry there about what he could look like at the start of the season as well. So just another thing that you could use to kind of break that tie. So we are 9 rounds in, and our running backs are Eckler, Dobbins, and Darrell Henderson. I feel pretty good about
pretty
that.
Nice, man.
That is
pretty nice. And in round
10,
man. Yeah, in round 10, I actually think we're going to get another one. Singletary, Melvin Gordon, and Kenneth Walker are all still on the board. And, we have Team 12 at the corner that still doesn't have a quarterback.
Yep.
So
we're going to get one of them. One of the players that we've been talking about is going to be there. At least they should be based upon most drafts.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker goes. So now we're looking at Singletary and Gordon. Singletary would be I think he would be preferred to Gordon for this build because we already have some of the Broncos passing attack.
Right.
However, if Javonte Williams were to go down, Melvin Gordon would be, he'd be a potential league winner. So, I'm not, if Singletary goes and Gordon slides to us, I think he's still kind of like on auto pick there. Looking at the tight end position still, since it is a focus, Pat Freiermuth is there at the top of the ADP queue. Singletary goes. Albert Okwuegbunam with Greg Dulcich going on IR become, he got almost in a different way as getting the Antonio Gibson kind of second lease at keeping his position, because it looked like he was really getting challenged there throughout August by Dulcich. And that would be interesting to kind of stack that Broncos attack up, but I don't know if I want to do that every week per se. So I think we're still waiting here until around 11 or 12 on tight end, honestly. And we're going to chip away at this running back position a little more, unless an elite wide receiver remains versus the rest of the position that's available. We've got Rondale Moore, we've got Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and we've got, let's see, Julio Jones, Michael Gallup amongst the best available there. I don't think I prefer any of those guys to Gordon if he were to slide.
Yeah, I think that given the way that we've been built out as well, I think that's, kind of the other thing, even if I was more interested in one of these backs that, one of these wide receivers that would break it for me. Question from Jay coming in here asking about James Cook and the potential of going for him here.
He'd be behind Gordon for me. And honestly, if Gordon goes, I might just be more inclined to go with Freiermuth. And Cook goes there anyway. The Bills clearly value the idea of having a back that can be a weapon in the receiving game. They gave the big contract offer to J.D. McKissick, and then he famously decided to stay in Washington. And Cook profiles as a guy that can do that for them. But Singletary, he was decent in the receiving game last season, and the Bills seem pretty solid that, he's still going to be their guy. So, if Cook emerges, it's going to be over the course of the season. I don't know that I feel as solid about him versus Melvin Gordon. Now, he would be more in that next tier where we would have to consider the Kenneth Gainwells, the Rashad Whites, the Michael Carters, the Alexander Madisons. I think that's more where James Cook belongs. I just think that Gordon is a cut above. Hopefully our competition doesn't see that on the board and pull the trigger before us.
So we see Garrett Wilson go here in the 10th round, which I think is noteworthy because, I've talked about, I was a pretty big fan of Garrett Wilson coming out of school. I've started to see him fall a little bit. I wonder how much of that has to do with some of the uncertainty that people might have with Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco coming in. Curtis, what do you think about the disparity that we're seeing with where Garrett Wilson is going here, being picked in the 10th versus somebody like Elijah Moore, who we often see going, a couple of rounds earlier, sometimes significantly earlier.
Yeah, went in the 6th. Doesn't really make sense to me. I think they're similar talents, similar draft capital assigned to them. I really do like both of them, and I think they both could be pseudo stars, with the right quarterback up there and the right offensive coaching staff. But I just don't see the need to take Elijah Moore with the questions at quarterback. I do prefer, Wilson. Dang it. Freaking Rumham, man. That's a couple of times tonight now. I'm starting to get pretty pissed. They took Tyreek Hill in the 2nd round. We were talking about Allen Robinson in the 4th. Ultimately, we may have taken Deontay Johnson there anyway. But, that one cuts deep. I'm not happy about this pick that was just made. So for me, Dave, now in round 10, I think maybe just taking Pat Freiermuth is the call.
I agree.
Let's get our tight end. He had a great rookie season that we would be talking way more about if Kyle Pitts didn't exist. The only cause for pause there is the fact that, we're also going to be starting Deontay Johnson most weeks. And then Ball Sacks comes and takes Pat Freiermuth.
Oh, my Lord.
We are just getting flushed out. Okay. Right. There's not a running back that I'm pumped about. Yeah, there's not a running back that I'm pumped about here quite yet. There's a guy a couple rounds from now. I'm not going to jinx it. So I've got Gerald Everett still there in our queue. MVS is pretty interesting. Julio Jones, those are the guys that we're looking at here now. Rondale Moore. Any of those guys stand out? We got about 30 seconds, man.
I actually think MVS is kind of interesting here. Take another shot on a wide receiver, get that in here. Get some of the depth there. Yeah, let's do it.
He helps us to cover up. We've now fully covered up our week 9 run as well. So in the week where we'll have Debo, Cortland Sutton, and Deontay Johnson all out, we'll be able to start Chris Godwin, 2 of 3 at minimum of Chris Godwin, Allen Lazard, and MVS. So And by week 9, we're going to know what MVS is. And we're going to know what Lazard is by then. So, we're going to be in a pretty good spot there. That does give us a 6th wide receiver tied to a pretty great offense. And, we're not going to be forced to go back in that direction in this draft unless there's just a value that we can't pass up.
Now,
so now in round
Gerald Everett was kind of interesting, but I think that, and let this update here because we should have pretty good odds here of being able to come back around and get Gerald Everett, who we've talked about many a time here. So
yeah, he'll be there.
And even if we, so I guess some of the other tight ends that we talked about last night too, because I do think that with waiting a little bit, we're probably going to want to get 2 tight ends in our next couple of picks. There's also players like you talked about, David Njoku. Albert O to pair with Russ is in the conversation. I might enter Hunter Henry into the conversation. Later on,
we're not taking Hunter Henry.
Okay.
So that's not going to happen. Johnny Smith's was like the 2nd most targeted player in camp or something. Like I don't know. I don't know. But there's other, Njoku would be super interesting. Albert O goes there. I agree. I think probably 2 of our next 4 picks are tight ends. So I think we're aligned there. I think Everett would be the pick. I got to go back to Underdog here for a second.
Hey, Sorry, Death man. Dealers is back. Welcome back,
hey, buddy.
Death Dealers. What's going on, Joshua?
Take the mic, man. I got to make some Underdog picks. I keep getting thrown on autopilot. They changed the clock today to an hour, and I'm struggling.
Yeah, I trust it. So the good news, I have filled up my Puppy 3s card. I still have a fair amount of BBM 3s in the mix, but we're also going to have a Puppy 4 coming out on Monday.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be a whole nother
There are going to be a lot of picks being made for me.
I may have to steer clear. I do want to do the I think I'm going to do the Bulldog 2. It's a single bullet $500 entry, 216 entrants. That one's pretty interesting, but it is live, and so I got to wait until I've got time to give that my full attention.
Yes, that is one of the challenges this time of year.
Josh McAtee says Hunter Henry was held back to injury in camp. So
then maybe a fair point.
It may be true. I mean, maybe true, but I don't know.
All right.
Even when he wasn't held back by injury, he's always been pretty touchdown dependent. And I think when we look at, I think in particular, we might end up taking Gerald Everett before him because he's in a more elite offense.
Yeah.
But I think a player like Austin Hooper still has the opportunity to become this year's Dalton Schultz and be the tight end 2 in his offense, or the number 2 target getter in his offense, rather. And, that is going to really pair nicely with that player that would have the elite, week to week upside when we need to start him, like an Everett. Okay. Michael Carter goes, listen, guys, every single time you mention a player in the chat, I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time you mention a player in the chat, it is jinxing us. So Jake says Rumham is a real pain. That is true. That is true. Okay. So we're on the clock now. We can go the direction of Everett. It's a little early, but I'm not super pumped about a lot of the other running backs that are on the board. So, if we wanted to go with an RB4 here, maybe an Alexander Madison, maybe a Raheem Mostert, I could get on board being a little early just so we don't get tiered out at our RB4, since we did go into a hero RB build. I'm fine with Everett or Madison or Julio Jones. I think those are my 3 here.
Right. So are we on the clock right now?
We are.
How much time do we have?
10 seconds.
Oh boy.
Everett or Madison?
Everett.
Okay, let's do it.
Austin
Eckler was on Austin Eckler was on a fantasy show today, and the player he was talking about that they were so pumped to have, like, that was lifting the offense this year, was going to be Everett. So that's kind of interesting. And Eckler's a big fantasy player himself.
Yes. So I feel good about that there. Oh, wow. Curtis, we've gone so long, the battery on my camera has become exhausted. I've got to plug this in.
You're fine, man. You're fine.
What I was gonna say was I want to do a quick
I'm gonna
check
take you
here.
I'm gonna take, if I take you off of the stream.
Oh no, I'm back.
There,
I'm back.
He's back. He's back. Okay.
He's back. What I was gonna say was Raheem Mostert. I actually do not recall. Did we get him on that team we drafted the other night? Do you recall?
I don't know. I mean, I know I wanted him. I don't remember if we got him. Let me double check.
I've had too many teams drafted in the last couple of days to have any idea. But what I was going to say was I think that we're probably able to wait and we can get Mostert, which was one of the reasons I was foregoing thinking of getting Madison there.
We didn't get
Mostert.
Mostert went a round or two above ADP the other night.
Yep.
So we were looking at him for RB5. In that other draft, we went Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White. And then we had Mostert queued up and we missed on him. So we ended up taking Jeff Wilson as our RB5 on that one.
Got it. Okay. So looking at the board now and where we're going from here, I've heard you mention Julio Jones a couple of times last draft. I've heard you mention him tonight. Talk to me about why you're interested in Julio to begin with here and how you think he fits in on this team.
I don't think he fits in as much as, I mean, at this point, I'm throwing ADP out the window because I do think, I mean, Mostert is a potential league winner this season in that scheme. I mean, health is always the issue with him, but I think, you know, he's got a ton of upside in Miami in a scheme that he's familiar with. So I think he's a better fit for the team than Julio here. I just, you know, with Julio, the thing that I can't get out of my head is just the value proposition. You know, I mean, we have one of the best receivers of all time that, yes, was not great with Tennessee last year, but in the prior partial season that he had in Atlanta before last year, he was actually producing really well on a per game rate. Now, he's not like in some of his advanced stats, he's starting to fall off a little bit, but he's falling off from like historic levels to still being like pretty good. So so I mean, you know, when you start out so good, like you can actually have some level of diminishing skill and still be, you know, super useful from a fantasy perspective and real NFL perspective.
Yep.
So pairing his skill set with Tom Brady, you know, you saw what he was able to do for late career Antonio Brown. And Antonio Brown, actually, I mean, he was the wide receiver you wanted from a fantasy perspective in Tampa, despite Godwin and Evans being there. Like, he was the one that was really jiving with Brady. And, you know, he and Julio seem to have that same connection, you know, with Gronk also out of the picture, which was not the case last year. It's possible that we get a tightening of the funnel of targets in Tampa this season to maybe where there's only more like 3 players involved instead of 4. And I don't know, man. You know, we've seen other players, these Hall of Fame level players, continue to produce into their mid-30s. Now, Julio, from a size perspective, is bigger than most of those guys that hang on. Mm-hmm. You know, it's different to be Antonio Brown or Jerry Rice than it is to be Julio Jones. But Larry Fitzgerald, man, like, he had a couple of those down years. He had a couple of those down years. Now, it wasn't due to injury. It was due to, you know, needing to reinvent himself as a big slot and getting some improved quarterback play. And so it's a different story. Like, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but man, I have a ton of Julio. I just have a ton of Julio this year. I think if he had, you know, he was not going to go into Tennessee and crush, even if he stayed healthy, because of the way that offense was going to run. I mean, we're putting him now in a pass first offense. He was in a run first offense that had young AJ Brown last year. So it was never going to happen. I mean, if you just look back to what happened in 2020 and you kind of just cascade that forward or project that forward, that's how I'm choosing to look at Julio. So Tampa's managing him properly. He's you know, going 2 on, 1 off. He's getting the true veteran superstar treatment. So, you know, I don't know that we need him as a priority on this team, but, you know, if you're listening and you're still got a lot of drafts left, I mean, I have Julio everywhere, man. Like, I've got, in Best Ball Mania 3, I'm like 34% Julio. I mean, it's nuts.
And we just saw him go in this draft in round 11 as the wide receiver 59. So one of the important things here to focus on is it's very easy this year to get Julio and take a swing on some of those attributes that Curtis was just talking about. We see KJ Osborne go here after Russell Gage and David Njoku to start off round 12, which brings up something that we can talk about here, a little piece of news with Jalen Reagor now going to Minnesota. Can we make any case for excitement there, sir?
Nah. People were trying to make a thing about this, and like I saw really prominent people saying, like, this is your warning sign. Don't draft Adam Thielen or KJ Osborne.
I saw that too. Yep.
I think that's the wrong take. Jalen Reagor is lucky to be getting traded rather than cut. So that is, that's good. That a team was willing to give up something for him means he'll probably get a chance. But Thielen's locked and loaded, man. And, health is the only question with him. KJ Osborne was really good last year. And was even better, when he's filling in for in the time that Thielen missed. And so when you look at Smith Marset getting cut, he was not providing the deep threat that they needed. And then you've got Jalen Nailor not ready to be. Jalen Nailor will be their eventual deep threat, or that's what they want him to be. That's why they drafted him, but perhaps he's not panning out. And so I think he's coming in to compete with Nailor as the wide receiver 4. Okay, so we are on the clock, Dave.
Yep.
Mostert goes to freaking Rumham. I'm gonna gosh dang it, Rumham. Okay, so I've got Austin Hooper. We could go like JD McKissick route if we want to get a PPR option on this squad. I mean, we're tiered out here a little bit. We've got Jarvis Landry available, Dave. That's what I've got for you.
I kind of want to say Jarvis Landry. At the same time, though, I actually think that JD McKissick could have some utility on this team. And I actually think he has a decent chance of outplaying ADP by about 20 spots.
Let's
so
go
I would
McKissick.
actually vote
That's
McKissick.
The need. That's the need.
Yep. So unfortunately, Rumham here is really, really.
Well, I'm.
Can you hear that?
I heard you say Rumham is really, really, and then you just trailed off.
Oh, I started playing a clip on YouTube. I think it's going to come through on the podcast, but I don't think you can hear it on StreamYard.
I wonder if Rumham is watching. Henry, it's possible. But if he is, I mean, kudos to him. He's making some great picks, man. I mean, like a third of his picks are guys, basically in every even numbered round, he's taking a guy that was in our queue. But it's not rocket. I mean, really, the Mostert pick is the only one where it's like, we're going way ahead of ADP. That's the one where it's like maybe he is watching. The other ones, I think, were just great picks where he was taking guys that really should be at the top of the tier. Okay, so what I do like about McKissick is, I mean, I'd feel fine about plugging and playing him any given week. He is not going to have he's not the same type of investment that Dobbins or Henderson was. But he had plenty of 15 plus PPR weeks last season, even in what was a step down from his 2020. So I really like that. And I think that we have the opportunity to come back later in this draft, maybe with 1 or 2 more running backs to give us some of those bigger upside swings. He fills in as glue pretty nicely, considering that it might take us a couple weeks to figure out what we have in Dobbins and Henderson. So this team's really coming together. I think as we get back into round 13, Dave, I'm pretty interested in either Austin Hooper or Hayden Hurst to miss on both of them at this point. If we were to wait until round 14 and get cleared out, would be pretty devastating. I think this team needs one of those 2 players, if not both. So I'd like to prioritize tight end in round 13. And maybe our boy Landry makes it back to us later on. Who knows?
Well, we're picking before Rumham, so I feel pretty good that we're going to be able to get one of those guys here.
Well, Rumham took Kelsey in the first round. I mean, he's not looking to take tight end again for a while, I don't think.
You never know. But probably not. Either way, though, I think that addressing that tight end there is going to be a pretty big deal for us, especially when you consider the players that are left. So at this point, Curtis, we're through 12 rounds. We know that we're going to have a spot for D and kicker. So we're starting to reach the point where we have to think about how we fill out the back end of this roster. At this point, we have 4 running backs. Are you feeling like we want to get to 6? You think we can just keep it at 5, build in some more backup room, maybe go after another quarterback that we like to fill in, maybe even bolster the wide receivers a little bit? Or do you think we have to get 2 more running backs?
Well, I think it just depends on who the running backs are.
Yep.
And it depends on if we feel confident with just 2 tight ends, depending on who comes back to us. Mm-hmm. So, Tyler Algier would be pretty interesting as a rookie who could maybe peak later on in the season. Eno Benjamin made Sean's list this year, as did Jerick McKinnon. Both players that I think if they took over in those respective offenses that they're in, in Arizona and KC, even if they didn't get, full season work, we'd definitely be really struggling to keep them out of our lineup if we knew they're going into a given week as their RB one on the squad. Jeff Wilson is also, still pretty interesting, super late, Dearness Johnson, but I think if you get one of those guys that can catch the ball a little bit, if you get Eno Benjamin or Jerick McKinnon or Tyler Algier in particular, if one of those 3 guys gets on this squad, I would feel comfortable stopping at 5 if there were better values on the board at other positions.
Sure. And I think that makes a lot of sense. As I start to think about how we build out this team here, I went back over to quarterback just to get a sense of the type of quarterback that's around, Curtis. And you still have guys like Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, and Kirk Cousins. So there's some decent backups available. We are going to be here, though, on the clock in 2 more picks. I was gonna start talking about Eno Benjamin, but he just went. So we're gonna be on the clock now. What are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I personally I would like to take Austin Hooper. But I'd be on board for Hayden Hurst as well if you want to get a piece of that Cincinnati offense. I could go either way. I do think Austin Hooper is going to have a higher target share. Cincinnati will probably pass more overall, and Hayden Hurst will probably have some of those spike weeks. But in the event that Gerald Everett's not involved enough on a week-to-week basis, I feel like in some ways, like they'll produce differently, but Hurst is a similar type of play to Everett. It's like you want that peripheral piece, but Hooper has the chance to be a volume guy. So I think that's what our team needs.
Yeah, I'm in full support of that. Both of those players, though, options that I like when I'm looking for that backup tight end. And I think that we'll still be able to have the conversation of potentially going for a third one on the team here. So we'll come back and have that conversation. Now, I just want to kind of look here, Curtis, in round 12 and the start of round 13 and see if there's any players that we're surprised by. So I want to come here and talk about Khalil Herbert. Now, you'd made a couple of interesting cases for him earlier on in the year. I definitely have a lot of Herbert along my best ball teams. Where are you currently on Herbert? Is he still a player that you're getting a lot of exposure to? Have you started to back off?
I've started to back off the last month or so, just in favor of Mostert. Sorry, I got to clear my throat here. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay. So I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, the market has only moved in the last week on Raheem Mostert, but it really should have been moving for the last month based off of his health, because his health was going to be the determining factor in him being involved. And if he's healthy, he was always going to beat out Sony Michel for that role based off of scheme fit and athleticism. I mean, Michel does not profile as the type of back that is going to get to the edge and have the home run hitting ability that is so, part and parcel to, this type of scheme that McDaniel is installing in Miami. So I've moved off of Herbert in favor of Mostert and Benjamin in the past, couple months. Earlier in the season, Khalil Herbert, when he was available more in that round 14 range, was a player that I was mixing in. I'll probably end up around 8 to 10% on him, about where you'd expect to be. But There was a time earlier this summer where I was like all the way up to 20. I just haven't been taking them in a while. I think Chicago has some offensive line issues. Obviously, they've got a bottom 5 line in the NFL right now. And, Herbert is competing with Montgomery and Justin Fields, for the production on the ground. And, I don't know. I could see it. I could see him ultimately being a better fit for the offense and potentially forcing more of a split timeshare with Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, what will that ultimately be worth when you have Mostert in a way more explosive offense with a better offensive line and a history of success with that coaching staff? It's just a different situation. So the opportunity cost of taking Herbert before players like that is what I don't like.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. If you go back and you look at the season that was for Herbert last year, he did have 2 spots, week 6 and week 7, where he put up 19 and 18 points. In those games, he had 19 and 18 rushing attempts. So you had that stretch between week 5 and week 8 where he was getting a ton of work, had 2 good games in there that he capitalized on. But I think the point is well taken about what that outlook could look like for Mostert and the explosive player that he is versus what you might be able to get from Herbert. So I think that makes sense. A lot of the decisions that we're making this time of year in a particular player are influenced by the players that are going around them. It looks like you're making some underdog picks. So I'm going to filibuster here for a moment, but then I think we need to start discussing our queue. At this point in time, we have now seen in round 13, Kirk Cousins go, Tyler Algier, who we mentioned, Marvin Jones, Tyrion Davis-Price, Stafford, Jamal Williams, Eno Benjamin, Hunter Henry, Golladay, James Robinson, and of course, Austin Hooper, who we drafted. Derek Carr goes. So we can have a conversation here about if we wanted to try and get Aaron Rodgers as the backup quarterback and have access to him and Lazard as a stack.
I mean, maybe. We have to consider who we're drafting the quarterbacks instead of, and then also the depth that's still available at that position versus other positions. So at quarterback, what's left is Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, and Justin Fields. I feel like those are 4 guys, that we like. We are seeing some teams start to take their second quarterback, so I don't expect that depth to last there very long. Running back, we had talked about maybe having the opportunity to stop at 5. I think the only back left where we could feel, somewhat good about stopping at 5 would be Jerick McKinnon. We might have to pull the trigger on that if we want to go that direction. Hayden Hurst would be the top tight end on the board for me. And then if we go to the wide receiver position, we've got DJ Chark there, Alec Pierce, Jameson Williams. I saw Ben and Sean take Jameson Williams at the end of one of their mains the other day. Of course, he goes, the second I mentioned his name there.
I was getting excited about that.
Yeah. It's fine, man. We're going to take David Bell later. It's going to be okay.
Okay. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, I kind of hope Rodgers goes because I think it's more exciting to take Justin Fields, but I feel it feels tough to take naked Fields over Rodgers when we have Lazard on our squad. So in that week when Russ is sitting, it's nice to have the correlation there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's McKinnon's not going to be around forever either. So I'd say for this pick, I'm between QB, Jerick McKinnon, Hayden Hurst. We did take Austin Hooper last round, and we have 2 tight ends that we feel pretty good about. So it might be McKinnon versus a QB.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that right now, McKinnon has the most favorable delta between our RV position rank and where his ADP would put him.
Okay.
So it looks like a solid pick right there. Now, I'm looking
on the clock.
Okay. Hayden Hurst, I think we actually have a decent chance of coming back around. So it's really McKinnon or Rodgers.
Well, Rodgers just went. So it's McKinnon.
So I think
McKinnon
it's
or Fields. Yeah, it's McKinnon or Fields.
Yeah, I'm going to say McKinnon.
Yeah, I think it's more necessary. Fields could potentially make it back. And if he doesn't make it back, we're still fine. I think, taking Trevor Lawrence or Tua,
Yep.
It would be nice to have the second QB in our hand when we leave the draft rather than having to burn, fab on streaming a quarterback for 1 week. I'd rather use that fab to take swings on running back and swings on defenses. That's how I prefer to play the main.
Yeah, perfectly fair. So we had a question here come in from Henry, asks if we've ever played in the NFFC.
Now, I haven't, but famously, Sean won the NFFC, back
2013 was the
2013, yeah.
And he didn't just win, he won, and I think he also got like first and second place in like a couple of the top 7 spots.
Yes, and one of those squads, was built with the bones of, the early strategy coming together with zero RB. And so that's really what created the mystique around Sean. Now, one of those teams was more of a robust RB squad, and the other one was your RB. But I mean, it went to show you that a big tournament could be won, multiple ways. And at that time, which is basically the Stone Ages from a fantasy perspective, I mean, analytics have taken off in the last 10 to 12 years exponentially. And so it was very innovative to be able to finish that way, and it was unique at the time. Henry says he won the NFFC in 2012. Nice. Also 4th place, one play away of getting first and second himself. He took a round 1 QB and round 2. It was a different time, man. It's a different time, Henry. Wow.
So I've only played an NFFC once, and that was before I'd started doing like really any research and any idea what I was doing in fantasy football.
Yeah. And it's fine. I mean, there's other good, high stakes redraft games out there. NFFC is obviously one of the prestigious crowns that you can win in fantasy each year. So hat tip to you, Henry, for bringing that title home 11 years ago. I'm sure you put that cash to good use. FFWC, again, I think we've had other team RotoViz guys do FFWC. I've really focused all of my high stakes energy into FFPC and Underdog, as well as kind of, I guess, off the books or off the record games. That's just, where I've concentrated my funds. I've had a lot of success on FFPC, finished 13th overall in 2020, multiple league wins. I have multiple league wins. Also in the Fantasy Football Players Championship, like to play that football guys option there at FFPC as well. I know they all have their merits, guys. They all have their merits for sure. Thoughts on Jalen Tolbert? I'm leaving the light on for him. It seems like he hasn't taken the job and run with it, and the team's really starting to pump Michael Gallup's recovery.
Yep.
But if Gallup isn't out there the first 2 weeks, Tolbert's going to get his chance. And I think one thing that's kind of important is like all the early camp buzz that we're hearing on Tolbert, he's running with the ones. He's running with the ones. He's playing with Dak Prescott. And then you get into the preseason, the team puts Prescott in bubble wrap, as they should. And so he's out there with the second and third string quarterback, not able to have the type of connection or production that he was having in these shared scrimmages against other NFL teams, or even in intra-squad scrimmages. So, it's, the media is kind of, all up in arms and a little worried about what he's bringing to the table. But I think the context is important. Let's see what he does, let's see what he does on national TV, wearing the Cowboy star in his helmet with Dak Prescott under center. Then we can make a decision. Tolbert, from a prospect perspective, pretty impressive, small school guy, later breakout, but, elite production when he did actually break out. And there's reason for some upside. He does have some good comps in our prospect Explorer. So we're on the clock, Dave. Justin Fields is a little more interesting now that we did get our Jerick McKinnon pick last round. That's probably where I go, unless you want to get a third tight end. Hayden Hurst has slid to us here.
No, I think at this point, I'm comfortable with that Fields pick. And I think that is an attractive spot for us to go. I think that I'd be okay filling our tight end 3 spot with a player that isn't Hayden Hurst versus, foregoing Justin Fields here. And then kind of having the fear that perhaps, Trevor Lawrence gets selected by somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Looking at the squad now, it's been since round 10 that we drafted a wide receiver, but we do have 6 deep. We would intend to leave this draft with David Bell as well. I think that the idea that he could be 2022 Amon-Ra St. Brown, crushing it in the playoffs, when Deshaun Watson comes back, having had the majority of the season to mature at that point, that the narrative is just playing in my head over and over again for the last couple of weeks. And I've just gone skyward in my David Bell investment and redraft. I was already very in on him in Dynasty, but I've really hammered David Bell in August. So we're going to look at that. I've still got Jeff Wilson in the queue. I do still have some interest there. If he were to slide to us, and that would give us a mutual rooting interest across these two teams. Mark Ingram's out there as well. I don't think he's got that league winning upside, but I do think that, he still showed that he's got enough to be, he's got some significant fantasy value, obviously, if Kamara were to go down, and that offense is going to be even better this year, assuming, Jameis Winston stays healthy. Mark Ingram goes as soon as we mention him.
Hey, let's talk about, not that there's major implications, but just any thoughts of anything relevant related to Trey Sermon being waived by the Niners. Of course, we had already talked about how the running back 2 there was Jeff Wilson. Does that shake up anything in San Francisco that we need to think about? And then is there any impact in Philadelphia to really think about there?
Well, Kyle Shanahan said that the reason they took TDP is they wanted somebody who could really bang it. And that was kind of what they were missing on the team. And they've had, all these injuries stacking up, whatever. Trey Sermon, while being reasonably well-rounded, he really is a zone read running back. He's not going to be the pounder. And so, if you've already got Elijah Mitchell, who the team is absolutely in love with, and you've got Jeff Wilson, who, has the speed, has the size, and Sermon's just not getting it. Why do you keep a third similar style player instead of TDP? So, I mean, I think it's not necessarily that Sermon's trash. It's good that he got claimed on waivers instead of going street free agent. That would have been, horrific for his long-term outlook. But I think, it does serve that the team must feel pretty good about Jeff Wilson's health, because he would be the direct backup for Elijah Mitchell if he were to go down. I think TDP will potentially have a short yardage role regardless of who the starter is. But in this type of offense, he's not the home run hitting type. He's the guy that's bringing something different. So that's why I've been on Wilson so much in the last 6 to 8 weeks as well. And it's why we took him in our main event, the other day. Elijah Mitchell has not been the picture of health. And Jeff Wilson, as the RotoViz Game Splits app has shown us, when he gets 10 carries, he scores 15 PPR.
I got a great stat for you here.
Yeah.
Since 2020, Jeff Wilson has been an RB1 in 25% of games played.
Yeah, it's not a shock. I mean, I'm sure he's got some RB2 games in there as well. And if you were to sort that down further into games where he actually, was the primary, it would really change his percentages. And so I think, you're pulling that from the NFL Stat Explorer.
Yep.
Gives you the great visuals. And it shows you what those spike weeks would look like. Drafting a player like Wilson is so exciting. There's other players like this. Alexander Madison comes to mind. It's like, when the starter goes down and that other back is coming in is still going to be the bell cow, then there's not this uncertainty of should I start him or should I not? Now, in best ball, you don't have to make those decisions. In the main event, I mean, dude, you got to pull up your bootstraps and make a freaking decision with your lineup. Like, that's why this is such a hard tournament to win. You can have a great team and just start the wrong players. And so you want guys that when the starter's out, you feel good about playing. If they're the bell cow type, if they're not the big receiving profile type. And so that's why a player like that is exciting. So he's going to be on the board here for us, I think, in the 16th round.
Yep.
And I feel like we almost have to take him after spending 10 minutes talking about him. So then that would leave us potentially with David Bell in round 17. And then, maybe we end this draft similar to the other night, taking a couple of defenses and a kicker.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the available running backs now, and there's guys like Dearness Johnson, Marlon
Rumham.
Mack.
I'm sorry, Rumham. Oh
my God.
My gosh.
Oh boy, Kurt. All right.
Moment of silence for Jeff Wilson.
Oh,
Rumham, bro.
All right. So what do we do here,
man? Listen, we're gonna take David Bell.
Yep.
And then we're gonna regroup. I mean, I am pumped. I am pumped about round 16, David Bell. Henry asks, will you keep Bell on your roster for 13 weeks waiting, though? It's not going to take 13 weeks, man. It's not. Now, I'm talking about, the end of the season, having that upside to potentially be the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland by the end of the year, overtaking Amari when Deshaun comes back. David Bell's good. I mean, I think he's going to be the number 2 target in Cleveland from day one. I really do. I mean, he was a featured usage player throughout the preseason, and he looks every bit the part of what he was doing in Purdue. I mean, he's going to be in the slot from the get-go, and he's going to be the chain mover. I wrote him up as one of my key sleepers for this season in round 16 and beyond. We get him in round 16 here, so it lines up perfectly. It's a very on-brand pick. But when you look at him and players that are like him in our NFL prospect Explorer tool, 2 of his top 3 sims are Keenan Allen and Jarvis Landry. And it is just so beautiful because it's the exact type of player that he is. The exact type of player he is. And both of those players were wide receiver 3s or better as rookies. And Keenan Allen, I think, was a borderline wide receiver 1 as a rookie. So, that's what you're getting in Bell. And, I think he is a player that you can't cut. We're not going to start him in week 1. We don't need to. This team's got all these elite wide receivers. But in the event that Lazard doesn't break out to the degree that we feel pretty strongly that he will, or in the event that Debo really takes a step back and he becomes a 3rd option in San Francisco behind Kittle and Ayuk, or in the event that Godwin stays ouchy, or Brady gets hurt and the Bucs fall apart, Bell could step in and potentially be a season saver for us. So just really, really like getting a player with his pedigree onto this squad.
Yeah, I think that there's certain things that you do when you're developing a roster where there's players that you're willing to carry, and there's reasons you could do it. But like you, I think that we might not have to carry him quite as long as it would feel like we might. The question I want to ask, though, now, Curtis, is we have Austin Eckler, J.K. Dobbins, Darrell Henderson, J.D. McKissick, and Jared.
I got a name.
Right. Yep.
Rumham's not drafting in front of us. I got a name for you, though.
Okay.
Jalen Warren.
That is interesting because as I was looking in the redraft command center for names, that was one of the few ones I could kind of dig up as a player we might want to talk about. Really, him or Darrell Williams, I think, are the only players. Of course, Darrell Williams.
Sorry, Dave is like, hey, people might be listening. Don't talk about it till after you select them. Listen, I know other shows do that. It's not as fun for you guys. If we just sit here and talk about the players that other teams are drafting, we're talking through our process about who we're going to take until after we take them, I mean, then you're not thinking ahead like we're going to do it. Listen, I mean,
we can navigate these waters.
We can navigate these waters. It doesn't intimidate me at all. The muscle memory and the reps that Dave and I have in, probably between the 2 of us, we're 600-700 drafts deep this year. So, we can flex into any environment and be okay. But you're right. We would be making it easier on ourselves. It is very possible that all 11 of our other opponents are listening in. But yeah, I think, we're one pick away. If you're listening to Guilds and you take Jalen Warren, we'll know. We're just going to know.
Yep. All right. After that, Curtis, so this is potentially going to be our last positional player here, right? So it's going to be Jalen Warren.
Yeah, Dave says there's 33 watching on YouTube.
Did Jalen Warren just go before us?
No, we took him.
We took him. All right.
Yeah, we took him, man. We took him. Don't worry about it. You're good. Yeah, there's 33.
One of the 33 run Henry. Yeah, you might be right there. But the thing is, honestly, a lot of these are picks that, if we're thinking about it, probably makes sense to somebody out there as well. So it's not shocking that some of these are happening.
Listen, if you're willing to throw down 2K to play the FFPC main, I mean, I know there's some dummies that play in all formats, but I mean, every manager that's entering this contest believes that they can win, and they're probably very experienced. Not everyone in this league has a green badge, so it's not like there's 11 other former FFPC main event league winners in this league with us, but about half the league has. I mean, so there's some good players in here. There are some good players, and I'm sure there are some who have never won an FFPC main event league before that are talented and have inevitable wins coming in their future. So,
or they've done it in four persons and didn't get the check as they weren't.
One of the 33 is definitely Rumham.
Yeah.
Henry, you're probably right, but hey, tip of the cap, man. He's got a great draft going. So, Dave, we gotta start filling out some ideas here at defense and kicker. So when I look at the kicker position, Daniel Carlson, Matt Gay, Ryan Suckup, Tyler Bass, those are all players that are in those elite offenses. They're going to have plenty of scoring opportunities. Sometimes you don't run pure with those kickers because the offenses are so efficient that you just end up getting all those extra points. But still, I mean, over the course of time, having kickers that are tied to the elite offenses, you're going to be better off. Then from a team defense perspective, by ADP, we've got Tampa, Los Angeles Rams, New Orleans Saints, Green Bay at the top there. The other night, I'm trying to remember what we did with that squad.
Yeah, it's okay. I got the schedule.
We took Cleveland to start the first 2 weeks, I know.
Yeah, Cleveland's got Carolina, the Jets, then Pittsburgh, Atlanta, LAC, New England, Baltimore. Those are their first 7 games. So there's some utility in having them there for sure. Other teams with fairly favorable starts, you have the Commanders starting with Jacksonville, Detroit, Philly, Dallas, Tennessee. Yeah. Those were some of the teams that we were looking at.
Henry, man. In 2020, you and I both, man, we had the Kamara 6 touchdown game in Christmas. Sounds like you finished up there high. I was 13th that year. And Henry says he was number 1 in the main event regular season, but couldn't seal the deal in the championship round. So that's brutal, man. But we've been there. Henry notes that San Francisco and LAC are good pairing for the first 7 weeks. San Francisco's already gone. We did. I think when we look at what we did the other night, it was Cleveland and LAC actually that we took.
Yeah, it was.
Los Angeles they even have season-long upside with the investment that they made in the pass rush, and also the fact that I think their opposing teams are going to be playing from behind a lot, which creates favorable turnover situations. So
and they have they have a stretch week 3 on. They go Jacksonville, Houston, Cleveland. So weeks 3 through 5, very, very usable.
That's just going to be brutal. So I mean, we can't pair San Francisco with LAC, but we might be able to pair Cleveland with LAC again.
Rumham will now be taking LAC. You're probably right.
Yeah, probably. It's fine. Listen, man. I mean, it's a good pick. If he makes it, good for him. It's a good pick. We're going to need a backup pick there, Dave. Who do we have in weeks 1 or 2 for, the Los Angeles Rams defense? That's
the Rams have Buffalo in week 1, but Atlanta in week 2.
What do they have beyond that?
Arizona, San Francisco, Dallas, Carolina.
So a little bit of a mixed bag. Might be a squad that we could alternate with Cleveland potentially. What do we have with Minnesota?
So Minnesota goes Green Bay, Philly, Detroit, New Orleans, Chicago, Miami.
So after week 2, that actually pairs not too terribly with Cleveland in terms of overlap. And then, we did talk about this the other day, the interest level with having that Thursday night game, paying a little bit to have some information. If you take KC, have the option. Yeah, no, Henry says to steer clear of Minnesota. I think Henry's trying to get himself into one of these drafts with us. He wants to do a 3-man. Okay, so we've had the run on defenses start. Actually, Cleveland goes early. Somebody sees their first couple games and says, "Man, not gonna worry about it." Our kicker queue is cleared out all except for Ryan Suckup. So we just suck up an LAC in the queue right now. Do you prefer suck up or the defense here?
I prefer going with the defense.
So we'll take LAC and then we'll solve for the first couple of weeks.
Yep.
Okay. So let's go back over to the kicker position. Brandon McManus was on our board last time. Matt Prater was on our board last time. I think we can get Nick Folk, Younghoe Koo, and Rodrigo Blankenship. I think between those 5, we can get one.
Yep.
So now I need you to find, Dave, another
I think we're going to go with Commanders.
Well,
Commanders gone. Yep.
Let's see. They are not gone. So who do they have in week 1 and 2 that would pair well with our LAC pick?
Right. So in week 1, they have Jacksonville. Week 2, they have Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah,
which I think of the teams that are out there.
Yeah,
of the teams that are out there, that's probably one of the more favorable you're going to get for week 1 and week 2.
Well, now we wait, man. Now we wait. This draft is in the closing stages. I mean, if you've been in here, we've actually got more people now, Dave, than we had when the draft started. So you guys are degenerates, man. I mean, Dave and I are degenerates for, playing multiple main events this year. You guys are even worse because you're just watching us draft. But we love it. You guys have been awesome in the chat. Thank you for all the questions. I know that I will be doing at least one more main. I think Dave will be doing at least one more main as well. Whether or not we're sharing that will depend on our schedules. It would be great to do 2 more shared, but we're also running into, scheduling and logistics issues with just 7 days, remaining until week 1 kicks off. Although we do have about 10 days of main event drafts left. Of course, famously, you can draft after that Thursday night game, which I think is pretty cool. Looking back at this draft, Dave says, Dave Gladstone says he's addicted to this stuff. Yeah. It is cool. I mean, I guess this is no different than like my son watching other people play Minecraft on YouTube. I guess this is like,
the kids love that. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's the dad version of that. And Death Dealer says, Death Dealer says it's time I'll spend if I hear one thing that makes me a better player. We hope that you hear that you did get that out of it. I think the big takeaways from this, Dave, is I look at our draft tonight and how it might differ a little bit from the last draft. Structurally, a lot of overlap. Things didn't go quite the same for us because we had to wait a little bit until that teardrop at tight end. So the team has a little bit of a different look and feel than the one on Tuesday did, where we drafted from the 103. But our strategy, really our strategy through the first 10 rounds was very similar. We wanted to have a team where we had an anchor RB, where we had 5 wide receivers that, we felt could finish in the top 20 if things bounced right for them. And, we did that. And then on top of that, after those first 6 rounds, we came back with, I think, a quartet of really exciting plays in round 7 through 10, like league winning type plays. If J.K. Dobbins gets healthy and gives us that RB2 that we don't have to worry about rotating that position, he slots in there at RB2 behind Austin Eckler and gives us some of that upside that we saw as a rookie. I mean, that's the difference making play. I mean, you think back to where J.K. Dobbins was going earlier this spring. I mean, we're getting him at a 3-4 round discount. Russell Wilson, man, pairing him up with Cortland Sutton. I mean, this might be the best set of weapons he's ever had. It remains to be seen, but it could be the best set of weapons he's ever had. And now he's got Nathaniel Hackett totally unleashing him. I mean, we could see record-breaking stuff from Russ this year. I mean, it's possible. And, we already saw what we saw last year from Henderson, and then MVS. I mean, it's the alternative play on the Juju pick where, you're kind of paying the price to take Juju, even though he hasn't, shown us that elite level of production the last couple of years. I've been fading MVS largely this season because he couldn't get it done with Aaron Rodgers when there was opportunity to become a clear-cut wide receiver 2 up there. And I don't know that the upgrade from Rodgers to Mahomes is material, but maybe MVS is actually just that much better than all the wide receivers in KC, and by default becomes a wide receiver 1. So I'm pumped about what we did through the first half of this draft. We were able to get some on-brand guys in the second half, and that's what it's all about, man. You want to have a little bit of fun when you're drafting as well. Feel good about the picks that you're making. Not too many of those gross picks that make you, hate your draft board when you look back at it. And I like this one. Dave. I don't know where you're at.
Yeah, I do too. Although I got to be honest, Chris, I look at some of the other teams in this draft and how those managers built them out. And I think that there's a lot of teams that are pretty interesting here. We saw a lot of teams start off with a good running back or two, then go aggressively after wide receiver. So I've kind of been impressed with how they worked through their teams as well. But let's just take a quick look and run down Runham's roster, because it's almost like, our team in an alternate universe.
Yeah, so Rumham goes with early tight end instead of early running back. Veers from streaming yellow in round 5 for AJ Dillon. And then goes with Elijah Moore in round 6. So through round 6, we're structured pretty similarly, except that we've got 5 wide receivers and he's got the tight end there. Obviously a clear advantage over top of us at tight end. Yep. The gap from Kelsey to what we're going to be able to piecemeal together with Everett and Hooper is going to be substantial. I mean, Kelsey's going to outscore those guys by over 100 PPR. For sure, even if we start the optimal guy each week. So, we're going to be fighting against that. But at the same time, after those first 3 wide receivers that Rumham took, I think we've got the advantage, man. So he takes Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson against our Debo, Cortland Sutton, Deontay. Let's call it a wash if you want. But then our next 3 off the board, we've got Godwin, Lazard, MVS. All 3 guys tied to elite quarterbacks. All 3 guys that could potentially, really be damaging this year. His next 3 are Elijah Moore in a putrid New York Jets offense competing against Garrett Wilson for attention, Tyler Boyd, who's the 3rd option at best in Cincinnati, and then DJ Chark. So I think we make up a lot of that deficit that we ate at tight end and our advantage at wide receiver. And then we also have, the other piece being that we have Eckler over top of Dillon.
Yep.
And we have Dobbins over top of Stevenson. So, I think we ultimately got there. But it is interesting. I mean, I like that team. I like that team a lot. I'd be totally happy managing that team. And I think you can do a lot of damage with it. Dave Gladstone says, you guys are great salesmen. Well, he did a nice job. But, I think, we did a nice job too, for sure. Other teams that I like here, looking at more balanced builds, I think that the team in the 4 spot here did a nice job. Fournette is not a guy that, Blair or Sean like quite as much. I know, Dave, you're not even super in on him, but, when you can get Leonard Fournette in the 3rd round, you're just, you're eliminating some of the risk. I mean, if he stays healthy, he's going to be an RB1. You got to feel good about getting an RB1 in round 2. And in some ways, you could argue maybe Fournette should have been drafted before Javonte Williams, given, the potential timeshares they're going to be in. But if everything bounces right for this squad, especially like if Zach Ertz were to stay healthy, that's a pretty impressive squad with Cooper Kupp, the pair of early running backs, Juju. If Juju is the guy at wide receiver in KC, Brandon Cooks is always there. I mean, you can freaking set your watch to that guy. Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith stack. That's a sneaky little stack in the 6-7 round there. So, you like what you see out of that squad as well. I saw Henry say couldn't have passed on Mixon in the second round. We did talk about Mixon. I think, Henry, you joined late. We were talking about Kamara and Mixon there versus Debo. Structurally, that just would have pushed us in a different direction. Looking at what we were able to do at wide receiver after that, I think this team still would have been pretty exciting. And, I think it would have been nice. But, if Mixon or Kamara go down, are we still going to be making those same types of selections in rounds 7 and 9 with Dobbins and Henderson if we felt so good about the top of our draft? So, that's just where it comes down to strategically, what do you want to do? Do you want to have your wide receivers and be able to forget about it, try to pick up those streamable starters at running back as they emerge throughout the season, every season, or, neither one is wrong. You can win both ways. It's just, one mathematically puts you in a better situation to win, whereas the other one, you do need a little bit more luck.
Right. And perhaps if you get that luck, you then in that scenario are better positioned. But across that distribution probability, I think we're a little bit better off with that wide receiver configuration. Now, one could push back and say, all right, well, what if Debo goes down? But the concept there is that we have all of these wide receivers we can use to fill that position in there. We're solid there. And then we're backfilling in other ways because there's less of a drop off for your replacement with those early players that you're selecting in that Samuel spot, with it being wide receiver. So I think one of the things that you can take away from how we approach this is that we are very, very focused on making sure that when we make a selection, we're going to be able to complement that with what we do later on, which might take you to passing on players that would seem odd to pass on when they're in certain points, but it's all about having that plan and then following it through.
Yeah, I do want to call out. I mean, Henry says your tight ends are pretty rough. Yeah, they are rough. They are rough for sure. We're taking a couple of upside swings here. Mentioned it a couple of times, and my portfolio, is proof. I mean, I am really treating Austin Hooper when I take him as my tight end 2, tight end 3. I'm treating him as if he is that 2020 breakout version of Dalton Schultz. He is set up to do that, and so I feel pretty strongly that we're going to get, especially in this tight end premium format, he is going to get the type of target share like he did in Atlanta when he was a back-to-back 70-plus reception guy a couple of seasons ago. And it's really going to transform this roster into something that's pretty supercharged. So, Dave, we've got to take Nick Folk or Younghoe Koo here in the final round. Who do you want? You can make the pick. You want your hometown guy?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's get a Patriot on this squad. Okay, well, guys and gals, if there's any gals watching, we brought it home, man. We're 20 rounds deep. We'll post a board on Twitter. Dave will try to break this up or not. It'll be available either in a mega pod.
I think we're just going to put this whole thing up.
It'll be available to you. So, hey, you won't have the visuals if you're listening. Hopefully we did a good job narrating. Hopefully you got the strategic nuggets that you would want to get out of listening to a show like this. We've still got more drafting to do. We're going to do some of that on FFPC. We're going to do some of that on Underdog. And man, we hope you're here every step of the way with us at RotoViz.com. If you haven't subscribed yet, you've got to check us out. We are really just going to help you unlock that last remaining bit of upside that you haven't been able to extract, based off of your own abilities. You've got to be reading Sean Siegel, man. You've got to be using the tools that Mike Beers developed, that Dave and Blair have developed and continue to curate. I mean, you've got to have my dynasty stuff. Like, if you're going to become an elite player, we need to be in your reading rotation. So take a look at rotoviz.com. And
I have something very exciting too, Curtis, that I need to interject with. This week, I have been finishing up a very exciting wide receiver, tight end versus secondary tool. It's going to allow you to look at, in a given season, every time that there was a target and the receiver that it was between and the defender that was looking at them. You can do a lot of cool things chopping that up. We're going to have some advanced alignment stuff going on in there, and then a little bit of a model based upon how a wide receiver matches up with the defense based upon how they cover certain alignments. So it's, I think, going to be something really cool that I have not seen out there yet.
All right. Well, can't wait to unveil that. You can check out our premium email, of course, or any of our social accounts to get a sneak peek. Maybe we'll even make it free for a day. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that, Dave. I'm going to go ahead and give us the big old what's up, RotoViz, on the way out. Thanks. And until next time, this was the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, RotoViz?